Hi and welcome to LDF Designs. In today's video I'm going to be working on these little 5x5 panels. I found them at a dollar store, I believe, with a little painting on them for 50 cents, and went ahead and covered them with some chalk paint and plaster and pieces of paper. Then I waited for that to dry and colored them with a little bit of gouache paint and India ink. I certainly didn't have an idea in mind for these, and they definitely took a turn as I started working on them. I was struggling with them a little bit and started just adding a lot more encaustic, which you'll see here in a little bit. In the end, I really like where they turned out. They kind of have a beachy feel to them, believe it or not, and that's all part of the journey. I wanted to try to use my pigment powders, which I showed there at the beginning, with some coconut oil and see if I could create some different aspects of color. That was the whole goal with these panels in the beginning. But they didn't exactly go that way, and so needless to say, it was an experiment that didn't work out exactly how I had planned. So right now I'm just putting the beginning layers of encaustic on, and then after that I will start working the panels. I covered these with at least 2 or 3 layers of encaustic to cover up a little bit of the texture and just make sure I had a nice base layer to work with in case I decided to do any incising. Whenever I'm finishing up a side of a panel with encaustic, I usually start with the sides when I apply my initial layers. That way, if the encaustic runs down the front of the piece, I can just work that in as I add more encaustic over it. So it just depends on what you want to do with the runs and if you end up creating them when you're working the sides. I often switch in between my different heating sources when I'm working my encaustic. I like the heat gun, but it sometimes can blow the encaustic around too much. Sometimes I like to use this little mini torch, but the problem with it is once you start tilting the torch, it doesn't give you as consistent of a flame, and so that can be a little bit of a problem. And then sometimes my big torch is just too much for these little pieces. So you'll see here in the beginning I kind of kept going back and forth between different utensils or heating devices, I guess, trying to figure out which one was working the best. Sometimes it's just trial and error. At this point, I decided to pull some of the wax back off of the texture. I wanted that to show through to the end and felt like I had filled it in a little too much. So I was just pulling some of the encaustic back off. I had created those circles using plaster, and then I used gouache paint and India ink to create a lot of different color variation, although you don't quite see it on the camera as much as I thought you would. So at this point I decided to go ahead and try the I wanted to make marks. I got these wire brush tools and then wanted to fill those in. I thought maybe I could try with a little bit of coconut oil and pigment powder, and I think there were a couple of things working against me a little bit. My wax was a little too warm probably for that wire brush, first of all. Second of all, I didn't have the initial layers super deep or super thick, so I didn't get the marks deep enough into the wax to really hold the pigment. And then thirdly, I'd never used the coconut oil before. It's definitely really different than my vegetable oil, and I had a little bit more trouble controlling it at the beginning because I think I was using too much. So this color didn't stay on or in the marks that I made the way I expected it to. And I guess for some reason I was thinking it may actually color the surface of the wax a little bit. But again, my experimenting kind of gone wrong. I probably should have just maybe used the pigment powder direct on there or something to actually color the surface. So I didn't like it. So onward I went with some white encaustic to start covering that up. Oftentimes pieces will have a pivotal moment, and this was definitely a pivotal moment. I wanted to keep with the theme of the pigment powder, so I did go ahead and cover up that area, and then I thought I'd go back and try it again, this time with much less coconut oil and a different color of pigment, and it worked a little bit better. I had a little bit more texture to work with, but as you'll see here as I keep going, I didn't really like it either. So you know, you just got to keep working the piece. I think I heard an artist say once that if you don't really like the way it looks, that just means it's not done yet. At this point I was deciding to give up on those particular pigments in the coconut oil and just go to some pan pastels. If you've never worked with the pan pastels, they are just glorious. You can add all kinds of color to the surface of your encaustic. You can use it to fill in your texture. You can use it on a smooth encaustic surface. It takes a little bit of practice if you want to put a solid layer of the pan pastel on there and not crack it when you fuse it. But I actually kind of like that. It gives it kind of gives a different effect, and I like the organic look of it. So I tend to put it on sometimes a little bit thick on purpose, and then when I heat it up, as the wax melts under it, it will crack and move around and create some really beautiful cells and stuff. So that's where I started off here with this in the pan pastels. I have often found it most easy to just buy those little makeup sponges at the dollar store and use those to apply my pan pastel. I use them in a lot of ways, I guess, but again, I like to try to use some inexpensive tips and tricks and tools, I guess is a good word for it, when I'm applying or making marks in my work. At this point, I pulled the other piece back out and started working it. I wasn't still very happy with the first one and the way it was going, so decided with this one to just completely go a different direction and created a lot of texture with my white encaustic. I may have mentioned in my earlier video or a previous video that this particular batch of white encaustic I have, I made it, and I'm not sure if I have the portions wrong or percentages wrong, but it wants to spread out on me really quickly with just very minimal heat. So I'm trying to be very cautious as I am fusing all of this white to not lose the texture that I've created, because it just melts right down when the heat hits it. So at this point, I kind of passed on the warm colors and decided to just dig right into the blues. I love blues. They're one of my favorite colors, and so just really didn't have a good plan, but of what I wanted to do. Just started applying a color to this encaustic piece. We have really been enjoying our summer so far here in northern Indiana, and so I guess I have been a little impartial, or is that the right word? I've been enjoying the beach colors. So after I put all that blue on there, I remember that there's a combination of these pastels that will create a really neat kind of Caribbean feel in an aspect to the different to aqua and teal colors that you can get. So I just kind of continued to work this piece until I got a lot of those colors in it. And then I have some Pearl X powders and shimmering powders, and this one here is a gold color. So after I added various layers of color and some more encaustic, I did go ahead and finish this off with a little bit of gold, kind of dusted it around on some of the texture. And I ended up really loving where this piece went. Didn't expect it to land where it did, but just really love it. So decided to go and try to create that on the first piece that I had been working on. I don't know if there are any of you out there that can relate, but I often struggle creating two pieces that are super matched, even when I'm creating them at the same time. And so in this case, I did end up really liking where that first piece landed and decided to try to emulate it onto this second piece. The second piece had a lot of different base colors on it that were different than the first piece. So I'm not very good usually at remembering the order at which I placed the different layers of encaustic in the different colors, or sometimes I'll grab the wrong color by accident. And some artists are really good about tracking that, what they're doing. It's a good idea if you are wanting to create pieces that are very similar, to track what you're doing. I don't generally do that. That's not really how I work, so I just kind of roll with it. I did, however, in the end get two pieces that are definitely related, and I do like them very much, but this piece did turn out a slightly different color than the first one. I will have images of the finished work on my Instagram page or my Facebook page. You can find me at LDF-Designs at either of those social media platforms. I added a lot of pan pastel to this piece. I got it quite a bit darker, and again a little bit more green than I intended to, and also more so than the first piece. So I did end up going back and adding a little bit of white encaustic over the top of this and reworking it a little bit more, just trying to create more texture and also bring the color back to that kind of teal or aqua Caribbean blue kind of color was what I was looking for. These panels had a little bit of a bevel to them, and I tried to accentuate that. And then also on this one I did create some lines with the encaustic, which turned out kind of neat, and accentuated those with the gold shimmer dust. So that just about wraps this video up. I will show you how they turned out here in just a moment. And again, you can find these better pictures of these over on my Instagram page or my Facebook page and see them up close. Thank you so much for watching today. If you have not subscribed to my channel, I would really appreciate it if you would, and feel free to leave me a comment or give me a like. I really do love hearing from the viewers. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of this video.